The 2026 NBA draft, just like that, has come and gone. What a cycle it has been. Now, obviously, we don't make indictments on a player until a few years into their career. We want to see how these guys actually acclimate and fit in their team, in the league, before we actually make an indictment on their draft stock. None of this is to say that I'm rooting against a player or team, or that I think any of these prospects are necessarily going to be a bad player or a failure. The grades are based on my evaluations, process, fit, and comparable players that could have been drafted in that range instead. For those that I'm low on, I can't wait to be wrong and learn from it. And anytime we get good basketball players, it's good for us. So these are based on my evaluations. Here are my first round draft grades. At one, the Washington Wizards went with AJ DeBonsa. I have to give it an A grade. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these top three guys, but AJ DeBonsa feels like he was made in a lab to be the number one pick. At 6'9, 6'10 in shoes, elite athlete, AJ DeBonsa put together one of the most impressive scoring seasons we've seen from a freshman as he got to the rim at will, lived in the mid range, showed off insane shot creation craft with his ability to get to whatever spot he wanted whenever he wanted, and feasted at the line. While the Wizards have had plenty of top picks recently, they don't really have anyone who profiles like DeBonsa. From day one, he should be able to step into their rotation as a starter and be a dominant scorer and rebounder. It wouldn't be shocking at all if he's a 20-point per game scorer as a rookie. And on top of that, throughout this entire season, we saw how much his playmaking and decision making improved, how he got better at identifying defensive coverages and using his scoring gravity to create for others. He has perennial all star written all over him. And if his defense gets to the levels that it should, and like what we saw, especially on ball during FIBA, during his senior year, his ceiling gets astronomically higher. This is an easy A for me. At number two, the Utah Jazz, Darren Peterson. Again, easy A for me. For a lot of people in the league and the media, myself included, Darren Peterson was the best player in this draft. It was a funky year the messaging and narrative got out of control, and he still put up some of the most impressive numbers from a freshman guard that we've ever seen while still not being 100% for the entire season, the vast majority of the season. With Utah, Peterson fits so, so well. Just right away, he's going to provide lethal shooting, off ball scoring versatility, secondary creation, positive defensive impact, quick decision making, that ability to flow in and out of on ball and off ball roles from that two guard spot. He's a shooting guard, he is not a point guard. But Peterson's quick decision making and positional malleability are going to be really warmly welcomed in Will Hardy's system. It wouldn't be shocking if we see his dynamic playmaking that we saw his senior year in high school quickly reemerge in Utah with how much ball and player movement they have. I think he's an awesome backcourt mate to Keontae George, especially given the leap in point guard at like actual traditional point guard play and playmaking that we saw from Keontae this year. Then you include Ace Bailey as another off-ball scorer, Laurie Markkinen, Jaren Jackson, Walker Kessler, Bryce Sensabaugh, Isaiah Collier. I love Darren Peterson on this Utah Jazz team. Easy A for me, and it would not shock me if Utah's fighting for a top six seed. At three, Memphis Grizzlies, Cameron Boozer, yet again, A grade. This may have been the easiest pick of the night. Cameron Boozer is one of the most analytically impressive prospects we've ever seen, so it isn't shocking the Grizzlies jumped all over him. Boozer, he's a power forward at 6'9", 252, but had a statistical profile of a point guard at Duke this year. That's insane to be the high usage playmaker, scorer that he is at his size. It's ludicrous. His feel and IQ are second to none in this draft. Just one of the most impressive processors and high feel guys that we've seen in many, many years. He'll immediately raise the floor of this team, improve their rebounding, and inject a ton of playmaking. The different looks that they'll be able to generate out of the pick and roll are going to be really fun, whether it's Boozer running the pick and roll with Zach Edey, some inverted stuff with guys like Cam Spencer, Jalen Wells, Cedric Howard, or using Boozer as the roll man. It's going to be really, really fun. Now that he doesn't actually have to create everything on offense too, I'm really hoping that we see Boozer's attention to detail and effectiveness on defense get back to what we saw before Duke. He's never been a big time shot blocker, rim protector, defensive playmaker, but he, like a lot of things, found his success on the margins, doing the little things and thinking the game a lot faster than everyone else around him. Hopefully that's what we see again. Hopefully being paired with Edie and now Isaiah Stewart as well, that makes his life a lot easier. The size, versatility, and physicality that continues to litter this Grizzlies rotation is so much fun. At 4, the Chicago Bulls, Caleb Wilson, common theme with this top 4, A. And okay, all right. This was actually the easiest pick of the night. Now, it's really cool that the Bulls have a rookie that is actually this exciting and actually someone worthy of this level of excitement. Not only does he fit the ideals of this new front office, but his upside is astronomical. Wilson has a very long way to go on defense. I highlighted that in some film schools that I've done on him, but his highs are up there with anyone in this class with how quickly he eats up space, the defensive playmaking, the motor, the ability to recover even when he's out of position. It can be really special. Where he's sneakily more ready to make an impact, though, is on offense. Despite not being an outside shooter yet, Wilson is a terror in transition, great at getting to the rim, surgical in the mid range, so good at creating space and angles off of just a pivot foot when he's not using his awesome explosiveness, and he's an awesome passer. It's rare that outside shooting isn't a swing skill for players, but there are a ton of outcomes where Wilson is a perennial all star, even if the shot never becomes a real weapon. As the Bulls start their rebuild with this new head coaching staff, with this new front office, Wilson is the exact type of player and person to help inject a ton of energy and optimism into this organization. At 5, the Los Angeles Clippers stayed put. They took Keaton Wagler. It's an A for me. Wagler wasn't my point guard 1, and some people don't even think he's a point guard, but it's tough to argue too much against this pick. What Wagler did this season was astounding, as he went from an unranked high school prospect with 2 offers from power conference programs to the number 5 pick. We rarely see that type of rise, but every bit of it was earned. Wagler has great positional size, and I honestly don't care that he's skinny. He's tough. He doesn't shy away from physicality. He's highly adept at stringing together counters to make up for his lack of elite athleticism. He does such a good job of staying composed and playing through contact. And the fact that he already has that level of craft and composure to go along with his passing and shooting is really exciting for what his game could continue to grow into. I'm not going to throw out any outlandish names as comps, but there's so much skill and balance and footwork in his game already that, like, once he gets stronger, it's really exciting to see what to think about what his game could look like. It also helps that essentially every teenager ever has gotten stronger as they age, so I'm not too worried in the long run. A for me and Keaton Wagler. At 6, the Brooklyn Nets take Michael Brown, and I promise this won't be the case the entire video. It's another A for me. Nets fans may be frustrated with another point guard, but Michael Brown is not like last year's guards. He was my point guard 1 in this draft and is the most well-rounded of this top tier of point guards. Brown's recent growth spurt is a massive differentiator for him. He's a lethal shooter both on and off the ball, highly creative playmaker, legitimate athlete, versatile scorer, and a much better defender than he gets credit for. Especially once he gets a little stronger, his defense is going to be just fine. The key, though, is that he has to improve his ball security and shot selection and just decision making in general. With the Nets and in Jordi Fernandez's system, I'm really optimistic that this will happen. Having the opportunity and capability to play both on and off the ball will be huge for Brown. The Nets will want him running the show mostly. You want to get him those reps early, get him that experience, get him that exposure, but he can also be used as an off-ball scorer, off-ball shooter, playing off of Seraph and Traore and Danny Wolf and Michael Porter Jr. and Julius Randle and Yegor Demon. On the nights where he's getting a little too careless, they have so many guys who can fill that creation role without having to take Michael off the court. He's the exact type of point guard that you want to build around. At 7, the Sacramento Kings, they got their guy who's the worst kept secret for months. It was really good to see them stay disciplined, that they didn't bite on any of the bait or the smoke and having to move up, but they walk away with Darius Acuff. It's an A minus grade for me. What Acuff did this year on offense was just ludicrous, just insanely high volume and efficient playmaking, scoring, shooting, in an on and off ball role. It's really tough to argue against. I wasn't an Acuff guy coming into the year, but what he did at Arkansas was undeniable. Now there is the elephant in the room with his defense, which is it's honestly pretty awful. Um, and some people out there are optimistic about it. I'm not. I think context certainly played a factor into it, but I don't think he's ever going to be a good defender. I fear that he's really going to get targeted relentlessly at that end of the floor, and I'm much less optimistic about him improving his fundamentals and screen navigation and just overall effectiveness. However, he could very easily be one of these rare point guards whose offense is just so good that it doesn't matter. If he can just get to passable on defense, which I'm skeptical of, but many other smart people are a little more optimistic on, it should be more than enough. Just get to passable. It should be more than enough for him to produce a very, some very fun basketball in Sacramento for a very long time. At 8, the Atlanta Hawks go Kingston Flemings. It's going to be a B plus for me. Now, we had heard that the Hawks were potentially trying to move this pick for an established wing, but I really like who they took given that they stayed put. Flemings is, and he's a super high character guy. And it is impossible to find or hear a bad thing said about the kid. He's got a lightning quick first step, gets to the mid range whenever he wants, that ability to get to his spot, stop on a dime, rise up for those jumpers. It's nasty. He collapsed the defense created for others so effectively. And there's just so much room for growth in his game. His playmaking, speed, defense are some of the best in this draft. The reason I couldn't get higher than a B plus though is because there's still a lot of questions, especially with this roster with the Hawks. Flemings has to figure out his at rim finishing and foul drawing, as both were really poor this year. On top of that, there's still a lot of questions about the viability of his jumper. It looks funky, but it goes in on mediocre volume. So, big question. If those two areas don't make a crucial jump pretty soon, I do worry that defenders will be able to just kind of sit on his drives and take away that superpower of collapsing defenses. And if that happens, it'll be really difficult for him to play with a lot of guys on their roster as the floor spacing just gets really gross really quickly. But with better spacing, you would have to imagine that the rim pressure stuff, the at rim finishing improves some. And even though the shot looks funky, it goes in. So still really like the player, optimistic about the fit and long-term development. At 9, the Dallas Mavericks shocked a lot of people. They went Morez Johnson Jr. I'm trying to be rational about this. So I did give it a B plus, but I'm pretty sure I was the highest out of anyone. I know at no ceilings, but I think anyone in the space on Morez Johnson. I ended up with him at 7 on my board. So this was an A plus in my heart. But I really needed to take a deep breath and try and remove my bias. I love Morez Johnson's game and was, again, higher on him than pretty much anyone else. He's a super versatile defender, one of the best in the country. To move like he does at his size, it's special. He's a freak rebounder and is barely scratching the surface on offense. Having a front line of him, Cooper Flagg, and Derek Lively, hopefully he stays healthy, could be absolutely terrifying for opponents. This is where I have to remove my bias because if Johnson's offense doesn't continue to develop like I think it will, the fit could get a little clunky, especially on offense. I love the fit and baseline that Johnson provides the Mavericks is all he does is make winning plays, but he still has a lot to prove with the jumper, with the ball skills, with his finishing. I think it's all going to get there. I am super optimistic because just 2 years ago when I saw him for the first time, he was a disaster on offense. He didn't have scoring touch, he couldn't shoot, and the handle was all over the place. Compare that to where he is now, astronomical strides. So in my heart, this is an A plus, and I wasn't doing A pluses on this, but I had to remove my bias and factor in the downside. And what if it doesn't work? So I ended up with a B plus. At 10, the Milwaukee Bucks start their post Giannis era with Braden Burries, point guard from Arizona, I gave this an A minus. This felt like a no brainer based on how the board fell. But Burries doesn't necessarily have an elite skill, but he does do a bit of everything that contributes to winning basketball. His positional versatility and physical strength should make him a day one rotation guy who can play with essentially anyone. Burry still has a ton of growth with his shot and playmaking, but his versatility doesn't pigeonhole him into a specific role in the backcourt. Even if the Bucks fall in love with a point guard next year or just make the smart decision of keeping Ryan Rollins around, Burries doesn't put any roster construction limitations on this team. So the reason I couldn't get to a full A, even though I love Burries, I think he's a winning player, super strong for his age and position. I ended up at an A minus because I'm just not sure that there's like that superstar rebuild upside with his game, even though I kind of love everything about his game. At 11, the Golden State Warriors went with the elder statesman of this draft class, Yaxel Lendeberg. It's a B plus for me. And honestly, just thank goodness everyone in Golden State was on the same page with this pick, right? Right? I personally, I love this for the Warriors. Lendeberg is one of the most versatile players in the entire draft, and he can really guard 1 through 5. We saw him pick up opposing point guards full court all year. He was switching on to centers. One of the most versatile, disciplined, disruptive defenders at his size. Super special. He's also a great rebounder. He can create for others, knock down shots, create for himself. Just whatever role he needs to play, he's more than capable. And we've seen him do pretty much everything on the court over the last 2 years. I don't really care at all that he's older because the Warriors have relentlessly, unfortunately, botched a lot of developmental projects. With Lendeberg, they're getting someone ready made for the rotation who elevates everyone else around him and is still a late bloomer in terms of organized basketball. So there's a lot more growth than the age may suggest. I think Lendeberg could be the beginning of a trend too in older players not being shunned in the draft, especially in this apron era of the CBA that drastically limits team building capabilities. So Lendeberg's going to be really cheap going into his prime for the Warriors. And I think his versatility at his size at that position is exactly what they need. At 12, the Oklahoma City Thunder went Adai Mara. It's an A minus for me. And please, please do not view Adai Mara as the Wimby stopper. There, it doesn't exist. So all you can do is try and disrupt him. Mara's superpower, though, on defense is his rebounding and protecting the rim. If you want him matched up on Wemby all the time, Wemby's going to go to the perimeter, and that means Mara's not going to be in a position to use his superpowers to protect the rim, to rebound defensively. I know they can run some too big stuff out there with Chet and, maybe I heart a little bit as well. We'll see where Sorber gets to. Even though Mara moves way better in space than people think, I just, that is not how he should be implemented in an NBA defense. In the playoffs, the Thunder got exposed with a lack of size and rebounding in the paint and a lack of perimeter creation after just 2 injuries. They were very clear, they very clearly have a type, and that's players who have an exceptionally high feel for the game. The Thunder addressed both of those issues they faced against the Spurs while still getting 2 players who fit their type. We'll get to Sturts later, but Mara's fit is clear. He's massive, he rebounds at a high level, and he's one of the best processors in this class. The way that he'll elevate their offense as well cannot be slept on. He's a big time facilitator, versatile at rim finisher with either hand, and a legitimate vertical spacer. Mara's hands are pretty good too, as long as the pass is above his shoulders. So throw him lobs, throw him high entry passes, no problems. You throw him pocket passes, you throw him stuff below his waist that he has to go down and get. It could be a disaster. So keep passes high. He's going to be fine. He's an awesome passer, legit rim protector, rebounder, really fun fit for OKC. At 13, the Milwaukee Bucks, via the Giannis trade, courtesy of the Miami Heat, take a big swing on Nate Amen. It's a B minus. The links between Amen and the Bucks were strong. Just go look at the owner and where he donates to. But if this was their only pick or their pick at 10 even, my grade would probably be a lot lower, maybe a full grade lower. But I don't mind the swing with the second pick. The Bucks are in full rebuild mode, so I think at least one of these picks had to be a big time home run swing. And Nate Amen is exactly that. If he hits, he could be a tremendous player. My problem is that nearly everything about his game and projection and evaluation and how people and myself talk about him, it's all theoretical. Outside of a great month, like it was a great month in SEC play, but outside of that stretch, Amen's looked lost. He's been inconsistent and just doesn't look physically ready. The key is going to be what type of player is he willing to be. If he wants to be one of these high volume scoring forwards that he continuously and irresponsibly gets compared to, I really fear he'll end up looking like a certain wing that's already on that roster. However, if he's willing to buy into doing the little things, being a spot up shooter, perfecting the tiny things on defense, and being more of a complementary player and play his role and execute in his role, I think the outcomes, especially early on, become much more encouraging and give him a foundation that he can really build on into the future. This felt like a solid lottery ticket type of swing for the Bucks, even if I was lower on Amen. I just really hope he like spams and binges Chris Middleton film instead of Kevin Durant. He's not Kevin Durant, but if he leans a little more into doing the Chris Middleton stuff, I get way, 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 way more excited about what he could grow into. At 14, Charlotte Hornets filling a major need with Hannes Steinbeck, B plus. Steinbeck made too much sense at this spot for him to not be the pick. And he immediately helps their front court depth and brings an elite skill to the table with his rebounding on both ends of the floor. Just insane amounts of physicality, pursuit, relentlessness, hands. His rebounding is so much fun. After that, though, the rest of his game is kind of theoretical. It needs work. His biggest hole is his defense. There may be some fun, kind of funky two big lineups that they can eventually roll out there, but Hannes has to get better defending in space. He's not an overly explosive guy, so the rim protection I don't think is ever really going to be there, but he has to be positionally perfect because he's not a great athlete. And a lot of the stuff at Washington this year was kind of all over the place. For those two big lineups to happen though, his theoretical passing and shooting have to become much more tangible. There are awesome flashes of him creating out of the short roll, of him kicking out of offensive rebounds, of him knocking down pick and pop, spot up threes, but they're flashes, and that's all they are right now. He has an elite skill and fills a need, but he still has a good amount of work to do. At 15, Chicago Bulls, Dalen Swain, it's a B. I'm the slap is getting out of control. It's very clear that Bryson Graham has a type. For starters, it was really cool to see Swain's reaction and just how much it meant to him and how emotional he and his family got. What he did at Texas this year was pretty outlandish with his slashing, the pick and roll creation, and playmaking. My concern is that he just won't be able to or allowed to do any of that in the NBA. If he gets stuck in more of a 3 and D type of role, it's going to be a bummer, especially since there are a lot of guys throughout this roster who play a lot like Swain does. Now, that fits their philosophy, but doesn't turn into a bottleneck. I would have minded a little more proven floor spacing with this pick, but it's really impossible to deny what Swain did this year. With the new front office, no one on this roster from the past regime is in a guaranteed spot. Going forward with guys like Wilson and Swain at the very least is really exciting for the Bulls, and it gives them a lot of athleticism and potential two-way versatility on the perimeter. Just really solid B. At 16, the Oklahoma City Thunder back on the clock because they are allergic to apparently only making one pick in the first round. Bennett Sturts, I went with the B. I really, really like Bennett Sturts. And it's really similar to what we talked about with Mara. The theme is exactly the same. Sturts is a lethal shooter, smart passer, and has outrageous conditioning. He plays exactly like pretty much every other guard on this team does, so it wouldn't be surprising if we see someone become a little more expendable. Even though Sturts was the system throughout college, that doesn't mean he can't play off the ball, though. He's just one of those guys that fits just about anywhere because of that shooting. And like we talked about with Mara, that insanely high feel for the game. Bennett Sturts is incredibly smart, can do a bit of everything on the court, and you kind of know just exactly what you're getting with him, which is insane conditioning and availability. What I do worry about is opportunity. And unless one of these other guards gets moved in the offseason, I know there are a lot of rumors going around and there is a roster crunch, so nothing would surprise me. But the reason that it's only a B is because of the age, because of the perceived upside. He's a really good player, but also just because of the opportunity and positional fit. He fits the kind of guys that they go with, and they just can't help themselves from not taking one of these guards. But there are a lot of guys like Bennett Sturts on the Thunder. At 17, the Detroit Pistons traded up from 21 to grab Ibuka Okori. This one's tough for me. Um, I'm giving it a B minus. I think I was the most skeptical on Okori of the No Ceilings team, but I do understand the swing. The reason I can't get higher than a B minus though is because I think guys like Christian Anderson, even Alan Graves, Cam Carr, LeBaron Philon just would have made more sense to me, and guys who I, from my evaluation, just had ranked higher. So let's start. Why does the pick make sense? Okori is an absolute blur with the ball. He plays with insane speed, but is always under control. He put up bonkers numbers in a truly horrible situation this season with Stanford. So, like, I promise I get the intrigue. I can't fully buy it, though. For starters, I think I'm a little more skeptical on the shot than others. The numbers and versatility were good this year, though, so I'm probably overthinking that aspect of his game. I'll take the L there, but just something about the mechanics and the speed of the release just gives me a bad feeling. More concerning, though, was Okori's defense and at rim finishing. The Pistons, luckily, have insulation for him on defense, but his consistency, fundamentals, screen navigation need a ton of work. Hopefully, those issues were a symptom of his offensive responsibilities and how much energy he had to expend on that end of the floor. Around the rim, though, Okori did a good job of drawing fouls, but he was really bad as a finisher. It is like under 52% in the half court. Stanford's lack of spacing is an easy explanation and a likely explanation for a lot of that, but it's not like he's going to be playing in acres of space with the Pistons. For years, we've been complaining about the issues with their spacing, so I'm not sure he's going to face totally different circumstances. I understand the swing. He'll be extremely fun if he hits. There's just a lot that needs to go right to get there. At 18, the Charlotte Hornets took Christian Anderson. This is a C plus for me. And this grade feels harsh, and I promise that it's more about the position that the Hornets went with rather than the player. Christian Anderson is just a nasty shooter. He's probably the best shooter in this class. Versatile guard, runs an awesome two-man game. We saw him be an awesome shooting guard as a freshman with Germany during FIBA and all this year as a sophomore. He ran the show at Texas Tech, so he has that malleability in the backcourt. If the Hornets bring back Kobe White and keep Trey Mann around, then I really don't get this selection. It feels like a lot of the same in the backcourt and just getting stuck on the bench. Someone like Cam Carr or Alan Graves would have provided similar strengths in a position of need with their floor spacing, with their defense, with their rebounding, with their size, at least in Graves's case. However, if White and or Mann are out the door, Anderson makes a little more sense. And my grade would probably jump to like a B, maybe B plus. Um, if they can get to a point of playing Anderson with Conkanipple, LaMelo Ball, and Brandon Miller with one of their bigs, whether it's Steinbach or Kalkbrenner or Diabate, their offensive firepower is going to be absolutely insane. All right, quick little edit here because after I recorded that, I wanted to keep it in, but Shams is saying that there's a lot of trade discussions going on with LaMelo Ball. So this pick makes way way more sense. If they're trading their starting point guard and bringing in Christian Anderson, that makes way more sense. I If that happens, then this grade is probably a pretty clear B plus, if not A minus to me with his shooting. Um, he tested really well athletically, experienced, versatile guard. I'm way more optimistic and like this pick with Christian Anderson way more if the Hornets actually move off of LaMelo Ball. At 19, the Toronto Raptors went with Alan Graves, and it's a C plus for me. I've gone on a journey with Alan Graves this year from kind of hating his game to eventually getting it. I ended up with him in the early 20s, so I promise I don't hate the player in this range. And while I'm not in love with his game like some others are, the baseline sales pitch of 6'9", good rebounder, good spot up shooter, and smart team defender is an extremely easy sell. I just also don't hate him going in this range. Where I struggle though is that I don't see the upside that others do, and I don't think he really makes sense on this roster. There's just a lot of redundancy, and I like a little bit more versatility in my lineups. I really worry about Graves' lack of athleticism. He's the worst athlete at the combine. I don't think he can create his own shot. His defensive versatility, I think, is vastly overrated. Like him a lot more as like an off-ball defender. And rebounder, really good hand-eye coordination, but I don't think he can really defend on ball, especially if quicker guards switch onto him. And his handle is pretty rough. There's a world where the Raptors run out Graves, Colin Murray, Boyle, Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, and RJ Barrett, and it's one of the funkiest, most fun lineups ever. It very well may work too, but color me skeptical. I like great like if Graves would have went to Charlotte, I would have liked that a lot more. Even the Pistons, the Thunder before this fall in a spot to San Antonio, I would have really liked that. It just feels like a lot of the same on the Raptors, and I don't think he has anywhere near the ball skills that a lot of those other forwards on the team have. At 20, the San Antonio Spurs made the biggest, biggest home run swing going Jane Quaintance. It's going to be a B plus for me. And I adore that the Spurs had the cojones to swing on Quaintance here. We had gotten rumblings and some intel that he was going to fall because the medicals were really bad. But we also knew someone was going to swing on him. And in our what would we do mock, I believe we had the Spurs taking Jaden Quaintance. Quaintance very well may not even play this year, which would be an absolute bummer. I hope that's not the case because he's in a crucial period of his development and he has to get minutes and experience, and just sitting out, we see it all the time. It just ruins a guy's career. I really hope it doesn't happen. I promise. But if he does, if the knee's just not ready, the Spurs are in a position to endure that if needed. They don't need Jane Quaintance this year, especially since they robbed Terrace Reed from the Nuggets. And we'll get to Reed a little later, but he can provide some of that solid backup third string center minutes right off the bat. But with Quaintance, and he has all the possibilities to be the best defender from this draft and the biggest steal from this draft. He simultaneously had one of the best individual prospect games of the year against St. John's, where he bullied Zubi Ejiofor, and one of the worst against Alabama, where he got ran off the floor. His offense still needs a lot of work, but he is a game wrecker on defense. A lineup of him, Victor Wembanyama, Steph Castle, Carter Bryant, and Dylan Harper could put up some of the best defensive metrics we've ever seen. They might have a defensive rating like sub 90 on legitimate minute sample. That's how good Quaintance could be. I couldn't get higher than a B plus though, because even though he is still a massive risk, there were also a few players on the board who really could have helped their shooting issues as well, whether it's LeBaron Philon or Cam Carr, Josh Jefferson, Alex Caravan, maybe even. Those would have been a little rich for me, but Cam Carr kind of specifically would have fit like a glove. But I love that they had the gall, the nerve, the confidence to take this type of swing, because if it hits, it's going to be an A plus. At 21, the Memphis Grizzlies went Kareem Lopez. It's unfortunately a C minus for me. Uh, this was unfortunately my least favorite pick of the night. Let's start positive though. Memphis did an incredible job of working the board, getting their guy, and getting a bunch of assets, 5 future second round picks, to get their guy. Great work by them. This is also a really, really cool moment for Mexico and Lopez, and I hope it sparks some really fun basketball going into the future from Mexico. Unfortunately, I'm just lower than most on Lopez. I don't get it. He's still super young, so hopefully there's a massive leap in his game just right around the corner. He's big, he's strong, he's a great rebounder, sneaky, effective, and creative around the rim. I just have no idea how he actually gets on the floor early, though, because his defense was awful this year. His footwork, his balance, his hip fluidity. His hip mobility, the lateral quickness, fundamentals across the board are a complete mess. It limits him on the ball, off the ball. He's hesitant and inconsistent on closeouts. He does a good job of being the low man and making that initial rotation. But once he has to make multiple rotations and closeouts, once those are required, Lopez is constantly late or out of control and giving up really easy blow by drives. Offensively, there's some fun passing and slashing flashes, but his shooting mechanics are super inconsistent, especially in his lower body, and his handle is really loose. And as always, I really hope he ends up being much better than my evaluation. But I thought Memphis had numerous chances at players who made way more sense, could give them minutes early, and still had just as much upside that I think Lopez has. At 22, the Philadelphia 76ers took LeBaron Philon, giving it a B minus. The LeBaron Philon fall was unfortunate, but not totally shocking. We saw breadcrumb of it when Minnesota, when they had the 28th pick, was able to get him in for a workout. We hinted at it in our Intel mock. It is ironic that they used the pick from the Jared McCain trade to draft another guard because they were thin on guards all year. Oh no, the consequences of our actions. It'll be really interesting to see, at the very least, to see how this process grades out between a couple of years from now. It's like, would you rather have McCain? Would you rather have Philon? Philon's growth this year was a lot of fun to watch. He's shifty, dynamic, and creative. He should help their backup point guard minutes, but he'll also get bullied, as it's pretty rare for guys his weight, like 176, I believe, was his combine weight, to make a major impact. I really like Philon's game, but it made more sense to me for Philly to target wings or forwards at this spot, like a Cam Carr, like a Zuby Ejiofor, like a Terrace Reed, who can provide some physicality, some size, some versatility in the front court or on the perimeter, and then go try and find a backup point guard in free agency. That would have made a little more sense to me because they have a very small backcourt now. It's very skilled, very fun, dynamic backcourt, but very small. At 23, the Atlanta Hawks back on the board. They win Zuby Ejiofor. This one was tough for me, but I went with a B minus. What Zuby did on defense this year was fantastic and completely surprised me. Every single year, he's gotten better as a defender, as a passer, a decision maker, and scorer. He should help with Atlanta's defense very quickly, given his strength and versatility and ability to slide his feet and move with guys in space. What I worry about, though, is his fit. The Hawks felt like they needed another big time rim protector, and Ejiofor isn't exactly that, at least as a primary guy. Like he's a power forward. He's not a center at the NBA level. Ejiofor is more of that pure power forward who hopefully can provide some floor spacing, but he's more of a four who you want scaling down on defense, not necessarily scaling up. And his insertion into the rotation could potentially allow them to run a little more of like a scramble drill, switch everything type of defense where he can be disruptive from the weak side. Offensively, he's a really good passer, has a solid handle, but his shot has to take a leap. It's still pretty slow and mechanical, but it feels like it's trending in the right direction. There's some fun PJ Tucker type of outcomes with him. At 24, the Los Angeles Lakers walk away with Cameron Carr. This is an A. Cameron Carr may be the steal of this draft. We had heard the Lakers were strongly linked to Terrace Reed and Isaiah Evans, both of whom were available here, but it makes so much sense that they made the move up to nab Carr. This draft was bereft of 3-and-D wings, and Carr was by far the best one. He's a lethal shooter, great athlete, versatile off-ball scorer, and disruptive defender with great length. Carr had way too many creation responsibilities at Baylor this year, which I think really watered down some of his numbers. Going to a situation where he'll be asked to do none of that, though, it's tough to imagine a better landing spot. Carr will immediately provide the Lakers creators, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, with great shooting outlet for their driving kick, for playing off of their pick and roll in transition. Carr's shooting gravity will also hold defenders, whoever's guarding him cannot aggressively collapse on drives, leave him on the weak side because he will make them pay, and holding them, making them defend him and stay home on rotations is really going to open up the lane for drives and rim runners. This is just phenomenal value in terms of talent and fit for the Lakers. At 25, the Dallas Mavericks traded up for Sergio De La Rey, point guard from Valencia. This is a B for me. It was a fun move by the Mavericks to grab a point guard late, especially since they went with a big early. De La Rey is crafty, a much improved shooter in recent years, a smart team defender, really fun, creative playmaker. The fact that he measured in at 6'6" is absolutely gigantic for him. I love the upside swing, and it'll be interesting to see if they end up bringing him over right away or leaving him with Valencia next year. De La Reyes still has to prove that the shooting improvement is legitimate, though. It's a little slow, and if he doesn't shoot it at an above average level, he could become really easy to defend as he isn't a blazing athlete. The athletic concerns show up a lot on defense, and he can be slow footed, really iffy balance. The footwork gets sloppy, doesn't really sit down in a stance. The on ball defense can get really rough. He's a smart, active, and versatile off ball defender. Like the team defense is really good, but it can turn into a disaster on ball at times. He's a great value swing at this spot, but far from a certain thing. At 26, the San Antonio Spurs grab Terrace Reed, center from UConn, B plus. I, I love that the need that they felt like they had to address in this draft was rim protection after having one of the best rim protectors in NBA history. But we saw in the playoffs the second that Wemby stepped off the floor, opposing teams lit up and immediately attacked the rim, and they weren't scared of Luke Cornett. We addressed how Jalen Quains could fix that down the road, but Terrace Reed can help with that day one as well. He's an awesome rebounder, really versatile defender. He's a dancing bear out there with how well he moves laterally and in space. Really good athlete. But what's grown so much over the years since he came out of Link and went to Michigan is his processing and his passing. He's turned into a really, really good passer. I love this fit for him, for the Spurs, his ability to play backup or third string center minutes and give them real value, especially in games where Wemby sits. Great pick. Conversely, let's talk about Denver real quick because they're the ones who gave up this pick. What are you doing? What are you doing? I promise, I understand that you're trying to save money for the Peyton Watson extension, but at the same time, you have to build a competent roster, and you just don't have one right now. And a big reason why is that the second that Nikola Jokic steps off the court, you do not have a center who can do anything on the court. Reed would have filled that massive hole for them right away. I thought the perfect fit for Terrace Reed for Denver. I I want to give him an F for the move, but I'm going to go with a D for Denver. Specifically for Denver, they get a D on this transaction because if that few $1,000,000 that Terrace Reed would have gotten at this spot is the deciding point in them being able to re-sign Peyton Watson, okay, I guess, but that says a lot more about their roster construction currently than than their willingness and their craftiness of getting out of the spot. At 27, the Boston Celtics swung big on Chris Senek Jr. B minus. I thought that the Celtics may look for a little more ready-made piece like a Joshua Jefferson or a Alex Caravan, but it makes sense that they went home run swinging, which is typically what they do in the first round. Senek could be one of the very best bigs from this class with his athleticism, size, rebounding, and shooting upside. The idea of him is tremendous. Like Ament, though, the vast majority of his game is still very theoretical. Senek doesn't shoot it consistently. He isn't a good passer, struggles to create his own shot, and is a frustratingly poor defender. He has the tools and desire to be a good defender, and you can just watch any Houston game and you will show coaches reaming him out and showing him film and going through stuff on the bench, and he is engaged. He wants to learn. He wants to be coached, and I love that. But he gets lost a lot and has never been as disruptive with blocks or steals as he should be. He's a great long-term developmental pick who could return immense value if a few just crucial pieces in his game fall into place, but it also wouldn't be totally shocking if we rarely see him get minutes this year. and that concerns me. At 28, the Brooklyn Nets went Joshua Jefferson, forward from Iowa State, C plus. I've never been a big Jefferson guy, but his skill set fits that, does a bit of everything, almost like a point guard archetype that the Nets have seemingly fallen in love with. Jefferson was a pretty disruptive defender and awesome passer, especially for his size. But he's one of those guys whose game is weird and confusing. Really poor athlete, one of the worst at the combine, and he still ends up with like 16 and 8 every game. So it's bizarre. A lot of people are way more confident with his shot than I am. I think it's still really theoretical. I don't really trust it. And if it doesn't come along, I really worry about what his feasibility in the league looks like. And I think the shot's going to have to get to a really good level for him to stick because of those defensive or those athletic concerns that show up on the defensive end. Unfortunately, I think those athletic shortcomings could be a massive hindrance. At 29, the Sacramento Kings went with traded back up for Alex Caravan, C plus. This isn't another case of me just not totally understanding the team's decision as opposed to me not liking the player. I actually came around a lot on Caravan this cycle and like his spot up shooting, quick decision making, off ball movement, and team defense. I just like it a lot more on a playoff team. And the Kings are not that. They just keep compiling a lot of these types of players, especially the upperclassmen. And I don't think he necessarily makes sense for them when they're this far away from the playoffs. Like, at the very least, if he gets minutes, he should be an experienced wing for Acuff to play with. But I think they have a lot of fat to trim from this roster, and hopefully they do it to free up some more consistent minutes for guys like Caravan, for guys like Nate Clifford. But right now, there just seems to be like a backlog of this exact type of wing throughout this roster. Finally, rounding things out, the Phoenix Suns traded up 230, and they grabbed Koa Pete. This is going to be a B minus for me. Even though I soured a lot on Pete this year, and I promise it's not just because of the new shooting for him, which is a total disaster. He just provides way too much value this late in the first round to not swing. He could easily be one of the bigger steals in this draft if he really leans more into his playmaking and defensive consistency and rebounding consistency and worries way less about his outside shooting. I do not think that the outside shot is the first skill that he has to focus on. I would love to see him really commit to the defensive end of the floor and really find ways to unlock his passing because he's awesome at both of those things when he locks in, but super inconsistent. Kind of similar to the Kings and Caravan, though, the Suns are rapidly compiling a lot of forwards with very similar skill sets. I think Pete still needs to get minutes to iron out a lot of the inconsistencies in his game, and I'm not sure that this is the situation for that to happen. He's probably going to spend a lot of time in the G League, which hopefully in the long run is great for him and his game.